Hey, so our next topic this morning is a check-in here on our IGBC goals and objectives. Sorry, we're mismatched with our sharing. Okay. What's the last one? Why did I lose the goals?
Bear with us, these technical challenges. No pun intended.
Bear with us.
Yeah.
You're working on this.
Okay, so here we go. We're really going to move now. So Ken McDonald referred a moment ago to a document from 2018, a 5-year plan. It was contained quite a bit of detail and planned actions, and you also heard from some of the subcommittees that they've moved more to a rolling. They look at it every year and they sort of adjust it year by year. And I'm a year and a half in, and this enterprise has been rolling along for a long time, and I'm just trying to figure out how to engage and how to give you. I mentioned a moment ago, sort of executive dashboard views of all the activity, and then an ability, of course, to set the goals over the horizon. Okay, so and so Ken mentioned the plan. There's goals, objectives, and planned actions, and we have these 4 sort of overarching categories: the information, education, outreach, the conflict, the science, and the habitat work. As we have been engaging in this idea of region-wide efforts as opposed to the historic ecosystem by ecosystem workflows. The information education outreach is sort of the most developed, where you have that group of representatives from all of the different places on the landscape. And Lori already shared with you those 4 goal statements. And there are some efforts that are ongoing to support some of those. I guess notably that the 4th bullet now is going to have a work stream flowing from it that we can capture in some statements for planned actions. Lori, do you want to say anything about the others?
I wasn't paying attention. What about the others, about the bear spray, or?
Well, so, yeah, so these are goal statements, and so then what you would like is sort of an
Oh.
objective and a planned action that goes with it. We, I think, are doing quite a bit. You mentioned this yesterday on the
Yeah.
communication across, because we've got the chairs of the IEO subcommittees in the subcommittees that are then participating in the larger IEO subcommittee group that you're leading. We've established the universal messages, and we need to do better with distribution of those messages,
Right.
making them easy for people to grab.
Yeah.
This bear spray question is one that, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
And measuring it, like, is there a metric attached to it?
No, I mean, all I can see is the increase in the grants that we get, that people, how many events and like things people are doing. There's just seems to be this really great across the board. Forest Services training employees. I'm sure state agencies are training employees who are working, but I can't measure that. And then, yeah, so I guess what we were looking for is we were kind of gonna go off of what this group was coming up with as their priorities to see if we needed to switch or to, redo our goals. So
I get one you mentioned yesterday for the summit, reaching out to some social scientists about messaging to targeted audiences.
yeah,
And sort of the broader category of that is understanding efficacy of these efforts, so we can use our limited resources. And as Jennifer was just saying, maybe measuring and making sure we are hitting the right that the messages are getting, not just that we're paying for them to be disseminated, but they're actually being received. So social science seems like it could be a part of this. And I know that that you're going to use the summit as a way of convening that.
And then, so we can put website again, under the consistent like, one of the things we need to do is with the website, with our consistent messages, and then now with the Bear Smart, just getting the website up to speed. So I think like keeping those kinds of things, but we might take out the bear spray because it's just so specific and make it a more overarching goal that maybe can line up with what the executive committee does. So would be my.
Well, and so then there's other work, items. So, Hugh asked the question yesterday about VRBO and, is that something that someone wants to take time to look at? And, that would have benefits across a large range if you could be successful. But of course, who's going to do it and how do you,
We have thought about drafting a letter, just asking them to like be mindful and take into consideration, grizzly bears is or bears. Is one that they can do, but just all wildlife. And, there's like an overarching, because even we know of like a loon nest that got destroyed because of there was all these VRBOs on the lake and they didn't have any information about that. So anyway, but we could draft like some recommendations to come to this group too, with that. So maybe it would come from this group, but
I think work to have before we go to the work of doing that, to have that first conversation with the Airbnb and VRBO, if they would even accept. I have an Airbnb, I host an Airbnb at my house, and I've never been asked by them to provide information to guests specifically. So I wonder.
that's why Dylan went through the
I
county.
wonder if they even do that.
That's why Dylan went through the county.
Yeah, I agree. I brought that up yesterday, but I would imagine that's probably not a door they really want to open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of organizations would be asked.
That's right.
Which might ultimately be good, but I don't know that they're going to be too excited about it. And I would be hesitant about putting that kind of specificity in cool statements like this. No,
yeah, I'm thinking about the planned actions. Yeah. So but reaching people who live, work and recreate and understanding those audiences, that I think is part of what was, I think of the example of the clean, drain, dry messaging. And so, I know Montana's FWP invests quite a bit every year in really pushing that message out. And so, they understanding what are the tools that are available and what resources might it take? How do you know how much of these audiences you're reaching?
What the presence of social media is for IGBC.
Yeah, that's a great question. We do have a Facebook page. Unfortunately, we don't have the password to that Facebook page and we can't get into it. I've asked Greg. Yeah, we'll have, but the problem is it has the website on it. I don't know how much duplication. I don't know. I asked Greg when I saw him and he's like, I don't know what it is. Like he had no idea.
We'll just shut it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is one thing that we could definitely do. And then we don't have any kind of Instagram. I don't really tweet. It's not like, but maybe someone on the IO subcommittee does. I don't know.
Well, this is where my pitch on this is we're a distributed network. And so the social media, if you're trying to reach these audiences, they're much more likely to hear from Idaho Fish and Game, Yellowstone Park.
Right.
And so the purpose of the IGBC is to collect that we've got those universal messages, people can grab them, but we're not trying to create a direct audience, I don't think, for this group.
So Lori, were you saying that the third bullet, you're recommending that come out? Did I hear you say that?
Yeah, the social science and the
The
no, the
Bear
third bullet. Yeah,
Bear
I mean, it's very specific.
Yeah.
I'd actually didn't make these originally, the chair before me did, but I mean, and I think they were all really good. I mean, I did of course, the Bear Smart one, but the first three were done by the chair before me, and I think they were really good because the group itself kind of needed to be rejuvenated.
Yeah.
And put in some specific goals. But yeah, the Bear Spray one, I don't know if that's something IGBC IO is happening everywhere anyways.
I think it's
a good goal. It's something we all want to see, but putting it in here,
Yeah.
so nebulous and it's so hard to measure. I think that would be. I think this is the other, compared to the other three especially.
Yeah.
This one is just hard to measure. Put your hands around what that means.
And what we tried to do was just support the proposals that came in that were handing out bear sprays, training people to use bear sprays, things like that. That's how we increase the range of it, that's how we.
Maybe that could be part of the communication and messaging. Top couple. Encouraging the use of bear spray.
Yeah. One thing that, we have talked about in my group is there's a lot of bear rangers across the Forest Service and, and things like that is, putting together a manual for them. So already put together PowerPoints that they can use that can be adapted to where they live. Brochures, where to get those brochures, things like that, like kind of a bear ranger manual. That would help Forest Service and states or whatever, or wherever that person was. And compiling it all so that it does have consistent messaging, whether they're in the Forest Service in Washington, Idaho, Montana, or Wyoming. And because Danielle has put together some really great PowerPoints to kind of help, and they're PowerPoints that you can use for agencies when you're talking about bear safety and bear sprays, and then ones you can use for communities. And so making that a resource. And to me, that's a good effective communication and then consistency across the range. That's something that we have already kind of started compiling that we could continue to.
So are we gonna do a live?
I mean, this is
No.
for us, I feel like this would be more for my group and then to bring back to you guys.
Yeah, and this one is actually one of the more developed, you'll see in a moment. I guess that's, so the begging the pardon of the group is that, you need a strategic conversation again, but we haven't, we've been trying to do it offline. We did a virtual meeting in March. This has been on agendas, but it's hard to do this in that kind of setting. And I do think we need to sort of do I think maybe coming out of this discussion this morning, if we could have some direction for subcommittees, they'll do their spring meetings. You can sort of pulse them and get some input, and then really nail this maybe in your summer meeting, in looking ahead. That's sort of my hope for this morning's conversation. So, yeah, so science is really, Frank is gonna be meeting with the science teams. This may not be comprehensive even of all the work that already is happening, Frank.
No.
No, I mean, just, yeah, obviously, but in terms of thinking about things, obviously each science team has got a ton of things they're doing.
Right.
I guess, I mean, if the question is, do we want to discuss some science priorities? This came from the overarching IGBC goals
Right.
from the 2019 meeting at Silver Lake.
Yeah.
And that was the overarching science goal.
Yep.
I guess the question is, how do you want to start filling those in right now with the executive committee, or wait for the science committee?
I don't know if there's gonna be any engagement on that at this moment, because they're probably gonna want to hear from you, based on what you presented yesterday.
Yeah, but I imagine you guys have priorities too.
Yeah, okay, well,
When we.
yeah, so Ken's got something.
Well, not a specific, but again, I go back to what are the goals of the IGBC?
Yeah.
Which kind of said multiple times, well, our primary goal is recovery and delisting. And then what are the science needs to achieve that goal? And that's what we need to identify, probably by recovery zone. And then there's some overarching ones like consistent or right word, but a population monitoring methodology that spans across different ecosystems. So the IP. And it might be.
Yeah, and you'll see.
Come up with the IGBC goals.
And you'll see the subcommittees do have science embedded in what they're doing. So it's sort of this top-down bottom up, but I like your framing of the overall mission statement is guiding.
David, looking at the rest of this goals. There's one under the conflict reduction. Understand relationships between emerging patterns and recreation. I think that's really a science goal. Because here it's talking about support effective measures in mortalities, but it's more than that. It's displacement, it's conflicts, mortalities, and I think that should go under as science.
I agree with that too. I think the, besides recovery and delisting, it's the ongoing conservation is part of our mission. I think getting a better handle on some of these interactions we're seeing with increased recreation, things like that, those are important for conservation. And I do think getting some empirical information on those effects.
And it's truly overarching issue. It's not just a single ecosystem, it's truly for all ecosystems.
Right. You mentioned road density yesterday too, so that's another one.
Yep,
One on the radar.
that's all. I mean, you're right, there is a conflict component of that, but it is, more than that. It may not be tied necessarily to recovery or delisting, it is in a way, but it's the ongoing conservation piece. It's a lot coming in areas, maybe not in the heart of the ecosystems, but around the periphery or out beyond the periphery, in between areas too. Those are big questions for us.
So, okay,
I think I have guess a process question. I want to check on what I think is a good conversation here about what some goals might be. But is our intent to end the next half hour with defined and just,
clearly, we're not at that level of,
okay. So it's just gotta be, we're just kind of spitballing here a little bit about what might be considered as some of the goals for.
Or what has, been laid out up to this point.
we're, I talked about, inertia is a very powerful force and we're still just sort of moving, forward. And this subcommittee, this committee can direct. And Scott, the point that you just made, I mean, these overarching goals, the challenge in the past is who is going to do work to make progress on that goal. So in the subcommittee goals, you haven't identified, set of, players that are accomplishing some of those tasks. And the challenge has been at the IGBC level, who is that? And so IEO is built this capacity. We just talked about how we're going to move forward on Bear Smart. Science, we've got incredible capacity. It's just maybe a coordination on some of the things that may be cross jurisdictional. And then conflict again is one that we're just lifting our heads up out of the subcommittee and thinking about it more broadly. So it's not going to be a complete statement to say here's a goal without saying and here's what we're going to be. Here's resources that we're going to be putting forward to try to make progress on that goal, or here's partners that we want to work with to make progress on that goal. So again, this one is, this is a work in progress. And so the suggestion that you had, Hillary, was to this understanding recreation effects, that moves to science.
Yeah,
Any other reactions or thoughts on this list?
I think we could put the working group on here.
Oh, that would
I
make
think it was
sense.
supportive community of practice.
Got it.
Whatever the get together is, whatever we decide to call it, it's kind of early, but we were talking about some sort of community of practice.
I just didn't capture that. So support a community practice for conflict prevention.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on conflict?
Very smart's kind of there, but it is conflict reduction, but it's also ideals. Go either way.
Yeah. And then like this, this week, transportation's coming up in a few contexts, and it's something that at some point, depending on what the geography you're thinking about,
Yeah, to me, that's not conflict.
not conflict.
You're talking about like overpasses.
Overpasses and stuff like we have for elk or mule deer or whatever. And the grizzly in Yellowstone,
That would be
Jennifer,
habitat.
they,
Not it.
I mean, they've had evidence of grizzlies going over have they, the crossovers,
We
the,
don't have any overpasses.
well, in Wyoming, on the BT side, we have overpasses. I was just trying to think, or maybe that's a question for Rick. Rick, any evidence of grizzlies using any of those highway?
Not that I know of.
South, you mean, you're talking like Pinedale area?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so this one obviously needs more work on all sides of it, and so too does habitat. Again, recognizing that the majority of the habitat work has been done in subcommittees. We've got conservation strategies with, with criteria. We're gonna be having that discussion in Selkirk and Cabinet Yacht. And so this again may be a science question.
Yeah.
And maybe should we display it that way, Frank, or is it a separate?
Well, I mean, there's all these intersections, right? I mean, there's this intersection of science with IENO, because if you want to test the effectiveness of IENO, and there's the same with conflict reduction, same with habitat. So maybe start thinking of a structure that explicitly makes clear what those intersections of science with all these different components are. That would be one way to think about it.
And I apologize, this came from the 2018 work. Okay.
So it's dated, and you
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to have a focused, like actual racking and stacking of
I
what
don't-
are your
I mean,
priorities?
Is it necessary? Do we need to identify landscape conditions allow for interchange?
I mean, we're doing that now.
With the work that we mentioned yesterday, Sarah Sells.
Oh, I see your point, yeah, yeah,
It's
okay,
ongoing though, a lot of it's.
Yeah. yes, okay.
Okay, so those are the overarching things, more work to come. So let me run through subcommittees. And I guess at the highest level, Yellowstone for some time has had this successful transition to delisted. And this is not just a Yellowstone point, but, successful transition we're in this uncertain place right now on what is the next step to achieve that goal. And that's true, in Yellowstone and in NCDE. Got that? Okay. So nevertheless, the Yellowstone subcommittee has been quite productive. They did quite a bit of work, as you heard from Rick, about on the conflict reduction work, including some very specific accomplishments reported at this meeting. They did update the habitat standards this spring, and they are working currently on incorporating the best new science on the IPM into the chapter 2 of that conservation strategy. So while it's a short bullet, it's a lot of ongoing effort that is represented in that subcommittee.
My preference would be to be way more specific than that. Step one is not successfully transition, but delist the population. Or take measures necessary to delist population. And my brothers, I'd say by 2023.
And I would also add, and I don't, one coming before the other, although we want the strategy ready for when we have delisting, is finish the strategy, finish our revisions of the strategy.
And that's a planned action for sure. Yeah, and I apologize, just the level of staff work necessary to have this kind of conversation at the subcommittee level, at the executive level, haven't pulled it off for this time. I think that by your summer meeting, that is going to be possible, and this, that's very useful input. So specificity, near-term action on conservation strategy. What are the steps needed there? Anything else, Yellowstone? So I'm going in the order of sort of occupied range. So again, similar goal for NCDE and similar set of actions. This does not reflect the decision that they just made at their meeting to refresh their tech team and take a look at the text of the conservation strategy. And I don't know, I have a better sense of what the Yellowstone team is looking at as they look at the strategy. And I'm not as sure what the list for that tech team is for NCDE.
Yeah, it's just an update, right? I mean, because we just want to make sure, like, there's things in the appendices, like some of the Montana new act, like state laws aren't in there and, right?
Right, there are some things like that, but there's also some desire just to kind of review the language we do have in there for some of the standards, that are they still best science, are they still, when they were, some of these were developed longer ago, are they still going to be effective in protecting the core in PCA? Heard a lot of that at the subcommittee last week. And, so a review of where we're, it's not saying changes coming, but do the work.
It could be like review / update the conservation strategy.
Because we're at our 5-year
Yeah.
time period that we said we would do it.
And then identify any remaining steps needed for delisting. To do a delisting proposal. Really implement those steps.
Okay.
And again, if I had my druthers, I'd say by the end of David. Otherwise, we get to the end of 5 years and still, I guess we didn't see that one.
Well, so I mean, the Yellowstone subcommittee has been setting goals for itself. I mean, they've got goals coming up, it looks like for April, May. So we did
What is the
I
goal
don't-
for April or May?
this chapter 2.
Okay, finish.
Do I have that right, Rick? Yeah. So, yeah, it's a goal, and yeah, that entity didn't have that discussion last week. That I will try to capture what you just said, Ken. And then I guess I should note that, I mean, that last bullet research, Cecily Costello gave a terrific presentation about a whole host of things that are, you know, in process. So I think we can do a better job sort of, again, capturing what's coming up and also giving you the dashboard for setting those goals for the groups for the longer term. Another one that was discussed at NCDE and also at Selkirk and Cabinet Yaak was the need to coordinate. And they agreed to do a coordination meeting with Selkirk and Cabinet Yaak as they begin their conservation strategy development.
You know, one other one for both Yellowstone and NCDE is we do have conservation strategies that are in place. And my understanding is all the agencies are implementing them. So to me, a goal would be implement and then report on the.
Yeah, and that is ongoing. So the agendas at Yellowstone and NCDE include reporting on habitat and, you know, population and so, but we can be more, I think we can, that's a good reminder.
Basically, the agencies have committed to habitat and conflict and population monitoring through those documents, and then are you doing what they said we could do?
Yep. Okay, so I just mentioned Cabinet Yaak and Selkirk, and you see that fourth bullet there is the coordination with NCDE, and there is a commitment, and I think it'll be early winter is what I heard, I think.
Yeah.
Then any thoughts or on this?
When I mentioned early winter, that was our goal to get the technical committee stood up and looking at an outline for the conservation strategy. In terms of a coordination meeting, I don't know that it'll be early winter, but we would like to do it before the spring meeting. So sometime between now and the spring meeting.
Okay, there's a planned action for 2023.
So in terms of the conservation strategy, is there a, can we ask for a timeline on that, or at least an understanding what the next steps are? Because it sounds a little open. And I know that.
Yep. You bet. So it was just rolled off. We got the 101 conservation strategy talk. Some members were aware of that movement, others were not. We've identified a pretty robust core team, a proposed core team. Other members will have to get back to us, or who will serve. We're going to distribute an kind of an outline and a kind of a description of what steps would be next, what working groups the members would work on. That will be distributed hopefully before the end of January. And then those teams would begin work after each member has signed off on that path forward.
Great, Ben, thanks.
Okay, it's a similar list for Selkirk. Nope. Well, yes. Well, okay, the work plan that's maintained in this subcommittee, sort of has two separate lists of actions. Yeah, so that's a good thing going forward, especially as you combine. So as Ken McDonald just reminded us, at Yellowstone and at NCDE, part of what you're doing in the subcommittee meetings is reporting on, are we doing what we said we would do? So when you have one conservation strategy for Cabinet Yaak and Selkirk, similarly, you could be reporting, yes, you're reporting on different parts of that region, but it's one conservation strategy that's being reported out. So that's a bit of work there, Ben, as you start this process.
Sorry, just to be, so I understand. So the conservation strategy that's happening in the Selkirk Cabinet Yaak subcommittee is focused on both ecosystems?
Yes, so that was a decision that was made, and maybe Ben, I'll let you take that, because
That's correct. There are many common players between the ecosystems. And so it would be written as a conservation strategy under one cover. However, it is a strong desire of the members who only have jurisdiction in, say, one state or only part of two states to make sure that we are pointing out some subtleties in the commitments. And so I believe that the ultimate product will speak to each ecosystem. It won't be a one size fits all for both. That's speculation on my part.
great, thanks, Ben. Anything more on Selkirk and Cabinet Yaak? So North Cascades, we heard from Don Stryker. Is he? I don't know.
He's not on.
He's not on this morning. He's got now sort of EIS process milestones under that first bullet. And then there's been ongoing habitat work for many years now.
I had a question about this one, or something for the group to consider. It might be inherent in sort of 1 and 2, establish and implement third direction recovery and maintain habitat. But with the work of the services, the interior, the EIS and Canada's work, is there value in having a goal around prepare for potential occupation? So sort of making it more explicit that could really happen.
That certainly makes sense to me. But I don't say, as I was looking through these goals for the various systems ahead of time, I guess I was kind of looking for consistency in language, and we have in Cabinet Yaak and Selkirk that language around increased population distribution. I think this language is actually fine. This first one, the establishment third direction, but maybe that's a larger overarching question is, do we want to look for consistency in the way to kind of describe these things across each other?
So that's a very well taken point, Hugh. And I will mention, so, I've been pulling these things forward and presenting them to you. I got some very constructive, specific feedback from Idaho Fish and Game. Haven't had much engagement from other executives in terms of looking at that, and maybe that's a task that we can, I really welcome that. I think that's important.
Well, and we've talked about on the consistency. It would be hard to make the case of why we would be extremely different, between these. There should be more consistency than less. So with the opportunity to look at that, and look at what we have in the NCD and GYE, it wouldn't I couldn't imagine why there would be vast differences. I mean, some maybe unique geographic specificity, but, it seems like as they go forward, that should be a strong part of where they start from.
And related to your comment, I mean, some of those, bullets under maintain and enhance, to me, those do look like they get to what you're talking about, preparing, signage and food storage infrastructure. Is there something more specific than that, or did you think that word, because I think there is value in that word, prepare for?
I was just thinking about, that's what I was thinking, like, it's in there, and I hadn't seen, when I was looking at this, the sub bullets. I wasn't looking at sub bullets when this thought was in my mind, so those are the ones I'm talking about, but it might be valuable to just make that explicit, pull it out, because it is sort of this thing, perhaps.
Yeah, that's exciting.
I have a question too, though, on, so Canada's not mentioned in there, but yet so, but by all indication, Canada would be a part of this going forward. So should there be some mention of working with the Canadian government or I mean, it sounds like that's probably a high probability.
Well, I'm thinking about when you went back to the Selkirks, there is a bullet that calls out increased transboundary collaboration.
So it seems like
This would be just as critical and important.
maybe even more so, yeah.
But the difference is the Selkirk recovery zone does include a Canadian component in North Cascades. ESA it doesn't. I mean, that's a difference, but I think it still makes sense to coordinate across them.
Because they're looking at working with the Canadians. So anyway, when I just look at that, it seems like maybe something in there about that.
Yeah, and so again, I'm gonna apologize from a staff level perspective of not giving you enough to make executive decisions on. These goals should be tied to actions that will make them come about. And, there are, I think Abby Sage is still here. She ran a process for North Cascades, asking all the different entities, what are they doing on all these things? And she's got a report. And that meeting just happened last Monday. We can get into a better process of getting you, here's where things stand. And I think that running that through to your summer meeting, we can get to the place that Ken has been, saying he wants to go here for some time. So let's see, I guess anything else, Hannah, on that Cascades? For right now, for where we are. The last one is, again, unoccupied, is Bitterroot.
You want to get, maybe this is like get ahead of conflict. Like they said, through some activities, or are they already doing this?
They did start a communication plan
But, yeah.
Hired person.
and they hired a person in on the Montana side.
Great, okay, just curious, thanks.
So it's just a different level of action, because it's not yet occupied.
Right.
There was some talk in that subcommittee of same thing, preparing for. With, again, for us, food store owners, we talk of when and where, getting some infrastructure in place. Same types of things have been discussed. I've tried to start an inventory of what we have already in place and what the needs are, so. Look at consistency across ecosystem. For some of this language, I think that would be one place that there would be some consistency. Here, maybe the NCD used it.
Okay, we may have done what we can do for now on this, and again, my apologies on, it just takes, this is, it's recover, delist, ongoing conservation. Great agreement there. and great agreement on all the different things that are in motion. And the question of steering the ship does rely a little bit on what's the next step on that delisting piece. And then also, you know, how we keep moving together on these different priorities. So I guess I'm not sure if that's a satisfying conclusion for this morning, but that's sort of what I'm able to supply here in the staff capacity.
I think it's a good, kind of stake in the ground. And so it puts us somewhere where then we can move forward from. And I think the next step, David, would be figuring out, okay, then when and how do we want to do the work to move to that next step?
Yeah, so certain commitments is, even just this discussion was helpful in sort of cleaning up some of these. Being able for me to sort what came in from the subcommittees. I would like to try to, particularly in the summer and winter scheduling, create a little more separation between the subcommittee meetings and the executive meetings. So we can do more sort of digesting of information to get it to you in a more executive format. So yeah, we can do better.
Well, yeah, David, I don't think you need to apologize for not managing to do the impossible, right? But there's too little time and a lot to digest, and there's a lack of clarity on some things. So I think, yeah, I think like Jackie said, I think this is a great placeholder. It gets everybody in that frame of mind, and we just need to allocate the time this summer to move forward with it.
Okay, well, thanks for that discussion. And I will be, so I think, you know, some of the subcommittee chairs are on, and I'll be in contact with you as we do the actions from this meeting and as we think about planning your spring engagements with your groups and sort of trying to tee up a more strategic conversation for the executive group at their summer meeting. Okay, so moving on to the rest of the Liberty list, we have planning those summer meetings, and we have sort of future leadership.
Yes, okay, so, got Jim, who is stepping in. I'll be handing the virtual baton to him here within the next hour, but you need a vice chair. And as we've discussed, you know, with the state stepping into the chair position, it's up to, then the feds step back into the vice chair. I think at the last meeting, we had a couple folks that indicated interest in taking on that role. It's really critical. You know, you will help with the leadership. So it's really, when you step into vice chair, it's a 4-year commitment, 2 years, you know, in vice chair, and then you step into the chair. And so, well, that's the way it's supposed to be. A lot of us have had like a 3-year, you know, because things happen a little quicker sometimes with folks leaving, retiring, or moving on, but the intent is it could be a 4-year commitment. So you had a list of a couple of folks. I think maybe Jennifer, you're cleared to be considered. If you or was someone from Fish and Wildlife Service, maybe?
I think I expressed some interest, but I'm happy to support Jennifer's nomination.
Well, one of the things we talked about is, you know, having that representation kind of spread out. And so I think it's been a while since, I think Tammy was 2015 was the last time Park Service had been in that role. I think Fish and Wildlife Service was before me on the federal side. And so, you know, having that kind of opportunity, I think it makes some sense. David, is there anybody else that has an interest, or, you know, what is the support? And I would say this is more on the Fed side, not holding back on the state partners here, but any other interest or concern?
Do you want me to leave the room?
Yeah. I think this group would say what they wanted to say. I'm pretty sure of that. Okay. So do we need to vote on that? Okay. Well, would someone like to make a motion for Jennifer?
becoming vice chair
Okay,
of the IGBC.
anybody care to second? Thank you, Claudia. All right, so let's do, since we're on the yay and nay, the yays, please, all in favor? Aye. Oh, see, you didn't say yay, you said aye.
Yay.
Okay, yeah.
Yay.
I think you said yay after she gets elected.
All right, I gotcha. Any nays? Right, so, you have a team member, sir.
Very good.
You're right. And then, yeah, hopefully you both will be able to serve out the term and carry it through. You know, the leadership showing up and being involved and staying engaged, it really does make a difference. And you've got David here who does yeoman's work in regard to keeping all this stuff moving. But you both will play critical roles.
Yeah.
Okay, what else? And then the summer meetings.
Yeah, so, we did an additional meeting this year in March. It was initially, there was a previous practice. There was a previous, apparently at some point in the past, it had been, a practice for some IGBC members to get together at the North American Conference, North American Fish and Wildlife Conference. The dates of that this year are March 20th to 24th. It's in St. Louis. And, you know, I don't know that, you know, I guess I put that out there as a possibility. I don't, many of the members here do attend that conference. And it is an opportunity to sometimes connect with other people in our organizations. Then you traditionally have a summer field visit and then a winter business meeting. And from the strategic conversation, that winter business meeting, I do want to focus on all of this reporting. I think the summer meeting would be organized around this strategic planning. And, you know, if there was a March meeting, that would really be more of a, you know, just touching base because there's gonna be a lot of balls in the air, it sounds like, in that time frame.
Question, if we did do that, spring meeting, would there not be an opportunity for virtual?
Not at Rothman, we said specifically it's in person. Just like next.
Oh, North America?
This is not.
Oh, the North American, yeah, sorry.
So-
But I mean, IGBC, can we have just have the opportunity for this, because I don't think I'll be traveling.
Yeah,
Do it myself.
we did,
We did this year because I was on it.
and we had to pay some extra money.
No, we were, what happened was, North American, that conference is sponsored by our partner, Wildlife Management Institute. And the way it was gonna be handled was as what they call an associated meeting. So it's on one of the early days of the conference. It gets on the agenda as, oh, by the way, IGBC members are meeting over here. But we get to use their conference infrastructure. So in March of 2022, that included virtual, a hybrid option.
Oh,
I will have to see if that's the case this time around. In the end, we didn't use the WMI platform because our federal folks weren't going to be allowed to, I think there was some kind of a COVID spike at that point.
There was.
And, but we weren't able to, we just did a completely virtual meeting.
yeah, okay.
So David, maybe a quick update. So I'm on another board that has a meeting there. And I believe it is a pay to play for the virtual option if you want that through the WMI platform. $2,000 or $1,500.
So David, the alternate, and if I understood you correctly, the way that we piggybacked it onto North American in the past is on a day in front of the book of the meeting.
It would be like a half day,
Right.
maybe a 3-hour meeting, 4-hour meeting. And again, it would be to get updates on all of these things that we've talked about over the last few days that are going to be in motion.
So I guess the question would be, how many, Matt, you're going, obviously, I go regardless, how many other folks would be going anyway? And if it's a small number, then is there a value in doing it that way versus just having a virtual meeting? So who?
It's all pretty jam packed, right? So
Exactly, it's a.
But you wouldn't have to have the meeting virtual that week. You would pick.
If you could get out.
Yeah, it's just the two of us that are gonna be in person, and we don't need to do it in conjunction with North. Does anybody else go to North American?
I may attend part of it, but maybe virtual.
Yeah.
Then we do a field trip from, figure out where's the first grizzly bear encounter Lewis and Clark had when they were in St. Louis. You research that? Dave?
Somewhere out on the plains, I think.
It-
Yeah.
Well, I'll just offer this. It looked like maybe 5 of us-ish will be in person, and I'm not sure that the value of that is worth trying to do it in North American, and if we feel a need for doing a virtual meeting, let's carve out some separate time for that.
I do recommend a check-in. It's a long gap between now and that summer, and there is a lot of moving parts and pieces, and we've heard even during this week of, that sense of, wow, that came out of nowhere, and so I think building in a check-in and a chance to communicate of what's the latest or what's coming, I think is extremely helpful. And if it is just a half a day, there is a value in that, because going more than 6 months is a long time to go without.
And prep for the summer meeting.
Right.
which
Prep
is
for the
more
summer.
intense and-
So I think there's a value in that, and it's, if you do it virtual, it's a pretty short or not a tough commitment.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll try to do a shorter virtual meeting in the March timeframe, not to conflict with North American. And again, I don't know, Judge, if you want to actually try to lock in dates or.
I think let's look at, and so when I talked to Jim today, it's important that the chair, and I would say chair and vice chair, if at all possible, but especially the chair, we land on, some potential dates that you would want to, because, David has been doing, again, tremendous work, but it takes time to land on a location. Who are you going to work with for a summer meeting? Everything from the lodging to transportation on the ground, that just takes some time. So if you could land on, I think what we've tried to do before is land on 2 weeks of possible dates. I also told Jim, there's nothing sacred about like the month of July or August. That's up for this committee and what works for you. Thinking about where you're going, you want to have it in a time frame that you could physically, get there, like Glacier, you couldn't get to, probably much before July 4th. So when you think about the location and then what makes sense time-wise. So I'd look at the two of you for some options, maybe.
Yeah, I'm flexible the last week in March and the first week in April, so we could just doodle something there, Jennifer.
For that one, then what about that summer meeting? Do you?
Well, it depends on if we want to talk about location, because I think we should talk about location first.
Location first, okay. So we heard for the timeframe for that short meeting, David, what,
So you said, so the week of the 27th of March and the week of the 3rd of April?
Reference to the March, but yes,
I have records for the,
that's fine.
Totally fine. either one.
Then let's doodle them both and see what works for the.
Yeah.
David can do
Yep.
the doodle. And then talk about the where for the summer meeting. We tossed a couple things around and, thinking about if Yellowstone is still a big focus for a lot of folks, as the one that has the greatest potential to move forward with delisting. You could go there, you could go somewhere else. It's your choice, you all, with hearing from the rest of the group, but when was the last time we were in that area? I'm looking at Matt, because you probably have been.
It was three boys, 20, yeah, so it was a long time ago.
Okay.
And I guess I have, and I'm okay with that, coordination with Jim. What I would like to know is, do people want, which side, like, I'm thinking that we stay in a gateway community. Do we want to stay on the Montana side? Do we want to go to the Wyoming side? Those are all different places. it's highly likely we would not be able to stay in the park because of, you know,
Prime season.
prime season. And I could maybe work on now getting something going together with David, for the gateway communities. Gardner might be a good choice because, we had the flood this year and the community is still rebuilding itself in terms of economically. And so if we brought a group in there,
Could be
might,
value
it
to-
could be value to the community. They might have more vacancies. I mean, logistically, it's probably pretty good in terms of that's in the headquarters. If everyone has a desire to, you know, I guess I just want to gauge what people want out of it, where they want to go, what they want to do, and maybe.
And talk about a field trip too. I mean, that's.
Well, that's what I mean, like
Yeah,
with the
that's
field
the
trip,
biggest
like
thing.
what are you looking for out of the
Yeah.
field trip? What do you guys want to see?
Yeah.
And then you can figure it out.
Right.
David, one thing you had mentioned was West Yellowstone, right? If we were on that side of the GYE, we could check out the Discovery Center, the testing program.
Oh, that's good. They
Yeah.
gave me a,
You go in
I got a tour
tour
from
even,
them. It's
maybe?
great.
yeah,
Connectivity.
I've done they showed me a testing thing, so that's kind of cool to watch, to see.
Yeah, and you could even go further afield. I mean, West Yellowstone, but you could go, you know, Ennis, Montana, Dillon. But
For
you,
sure.
you know. it's-
But that might be
some
a
of
good
those.
plan. It's just a matter of, you know, if we go in July or, I mean, that's high season, so you
Yeah.
just have to make sure that there's.
Hotels that
Okay,
will
we'll
do
go.
state rates, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why you need to start to nail it down
Yeah.
now to have
Sure.
an opportunity. And almost anywhere we go, summertime is peak season and, you know,
Right.
across the west.
And, you know, I talked to my boss, Superintendent Canchali, and he's supportive of the group coming into the park, and we could do some sort of something in the park as well. On one of the days or something.
It's for y'all.
Well, I'm partial to the West Yellowstone.
I like that idea.
For the group. We don't get the benefit of helping Gardner out, but
That's okay. It's a pretty, you know, central location for all of those things that were mentioned, so.
a lot of heads nodding.
You're also close to Virginia City if you want to go,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
just as an option.
Yeah.
So thinking about that, do either of you have some either absolute no dates in July or August, whatever works for y'all?
And
It's always the easiest place to start with what won't work.
the waffle is the week of month,
July.
July.
Okay. What about the last week in July? Either the week, the 24th or the week of the 31st, it's those are Mondays.
Week of the 31st better.
Are we kicking June off the table?
Yeah,
Because
For Yellowstone area, there could be.
I mean, it depends, like,
Just-
you know, it's been a
No.
big snow year so far, we don't know. Earlier June versus obviously later June.
yeah,
We may have availability of lodging,
That's absolutely
Right.
true, that may drive our decision.
so yeah.
Yeah,
I hate them, but I'm sure I
You
can.
hate what?
I said I hate to go cold, but
Oh.
I don't know that I can say for sure that first week in August, is that what we're looking at the?
what's your 17th look like? The week of the 17th of July.
That looks fine too.
Maybe we do those 2 weeks, this 17th or the,
24th or the 31st.
yeah, I don't like the 24th.
You don't like
for the commission meeting.
Got it.
So David, you'll have a couple of dates you'll send out to the group.
Yeah, so I'll do those 2 weeks, I guess,
What are the 2 weeks again?
17th of July and the 31st of July. And then I guess that is high, that's the highest possible season. So
Yeah.
the shoulder season's true, but I guess that's always been, somehow they pulled off these meetings all these years.
but we
I
don't
mean,
do
I
it.
think we gotta
Yeah.
do it now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can we also do a June one too? or-
Oh, I think, as a backup? Yeah, I mean, I think,
Towards the end of June, you should.
in terms of weather, yeah. I mean, we could pick a week at the end of June as a backup.
We could
My
do
last
19th,
week of June is totally plugged up.
the week of the 19th.
Yeah, I do. We could do that.
It's a great-
I consider it a distant backup, so.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's a great time to be over in North Cascades too. Hi, sorry I'm late.
Yeah, I mean, if we do need a backup from, it doesn't sound like we do, but. It's been a while, it looked like from the past schedules. Since there are discussions going on there.
Yeah, I mean, you're at the
Just
other
backing
end
up
of
with
it, right? So you've got the Yellowstone closest to maybe, and then you've got the work that's going on there that is, wide open and, yeah.
I had thought too that the North Cascades might be an interesting place to visit. I love the idea of going to Yellowstone. I've never been. I'm in to do
Well,
it.
Hannah, we're gonna do that for you then.
Spent a lot of time in Teton, but not almost done it, so.
I like the idea of a December meeting in Du Bois when the late season cow hunt is going on.
Oh, I was waiting for the hook there, cause I was like, have you been there late season? Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. What do you think?
Sounds good. Look for it. So the action here for me is that you're gonna get in the recap of all of the various actions from this meeting, there will be doodle polls for the weeks of March 27th and April 3rd, looking for sort of a couple hour check-in meeting virtual. And then for the weeks of July 17th and July 31st, the distant backup of June 19th. And so we'll test those dates for a in-person summer field visit in the Yellowstone ecosystem with an initial target of the sort of West Yellowstone area. And subject to what we find out on lodging and accommodations. So then,
And so David, I'll work, do you want to work together to, because I feel like we need to get on the
Yep.
accommodations thing now.
Yep.
Are we also gonna look at the December timing? Okay.
Yes, the next one is December location and dates. I guess in the past, there have been sort of standing dates. It was always, I think, the second week in December,
But nothing sacred.
and it was always in Missoula.
Is it always, maybe December's a hard time to leave, just all the holiday stuff happening.
I think there was also the connection though with the subcommittees and, they were happening and then we'd happen after that. But I think what I heard David say, and this is for you all to think about, is putting some space though, because it would be nice to have space after the subcommittees meet so that you can gather up that information. David's been on a whirlwind tour, going to the subcommittee meetings and then trying to come here. So again, you all own it. You have the
What about
flexibility.
January? The January.
It's more 6 months and 6 months split, 5 and 7.
Own it.
I don't
So.
have any problem with that.
So I actually do love that idea, with the possible exception of January 2024. Because we're doing this summit, which could be that month or February.
But you could tie it in together too. I mean, you could tie in
It's not a bad idea.
and have.
Now, that's
exec-
interesting.
Well, and have the execs, be, I would be interested in seeing it.
Right,
Yeah. Just throw that out
So for us, every other year is legislative session starts
in
right after
January.
New Year, so 23 would work. Correct, yeah. 24 would work.
Or the other way, session starts.
January was the.
Well, yeah, I'm struggling with it because we have a session every year. So January can be, early January, not so bad. Then
Yeah.
then things start to unravel. So, but,
We also have waffle early in January. too.
and we have, yeah, right.
So are we back to December?
Well,
I'm fine either. I mean, there is the week of December 4th, which is consistent with what we need to do.
You could have it in Yellowstone and it's
Bring my family.
Snowmobile.
Well, that's before winter season opens, so I probably don't want to be around.
yeah, I guess I would probably favor that. Later December, either the 11th or the 18th. December.
I think 18th gets too far down. 11th is doable.
That is historically when it has been.
That's how we.
And there's probably a reason for that. Okay, so I'll add that into the doodle poll. And then that question, of course, is of location. Wherever.
Yeah,
I
again,
vote for
nothing
Bozeman,
safer.
but that's just because I'm being selfish because it's close for me and it's sunny.
It is sunny and it's.
For me, I didn't like it here.
Sunny in Missoula today, was saying it was warmer today.
Yeah, the clouds keep the heat in.
Didn't feel.
David, since so much of this falls to you, let me just ask you, I'm hopeful that Bozeman makes life a little easier for you.
It does, but again, I can, this is your,
I understand it, but, right, but it's sixes for me. They're equally challenging to get to, but not terrible, but, we're both cold. So,
The donut, I mean, so it's fast.
so yeah, I'm fine with Bozeman. If it works for the group, I'm fine with it.
So we, and I don't know, we listed in it.
Not advocated for, but times in the past, we talked about Denver, and just because these are travel, right? Like field trip is not.
It's not normally in the January or the winter meeting.
But it's easy to, I think most people can probably get to Denver on one hop versus two from all that. But that's,
Although I think a lot of people based in Bozeman or Missoula, there are a lot of people that drive.
Well, let me throw out, maybe it's no easier to fly into Boise than for a lot of you, than it is for, yeah, because it's occupied habitat, but it's closer than Denver, so.
I think it should be based on the state that has the most bears.
Does it move around? I mean,
There's nothing sacred about
Go to
location.
Spokane.
You could go to Cascades. I mean, I keep saying there's nothing sacred about the location or, that time. You have that flexibility. I mean, it does make sense to be within proximity of grizzly bear region, like, not the Key West, but, somewhere within it.
We were saying that the list of enemies is the lower 48, so that does check in.
True.
Are people's preference to have it, who would appreciate Boise because it's easier for them to get to? And who likes Montana, whether it be in
Go
Bozeman?
anywhere.
Put your hand down. Let's just do it. Let's do it in Bozeman.
He didn't say who likes Boise.
that was the last item on the Liberty list. So,
So the only thing left is to officially transfer the, here, I'm
This
giving
is
you a
what we're
pen.
gonna use.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get something heavier.
Yes. But yeah, it has been a great 2 years and this going in my 13th of being involved with this group in some way or form or fashion or with the subcommittees. I started out this morning just recognizing everyone who is a part of this is a professional, passionate, committed person who wants to see this magnificent species exist on the landscape, thrive on the landscape, and coexist, without major impacts to those communities and the folks who live in the areas the bears are, or we hope to have them in. So you just got to continue that work. I hope that, as I said this morning, that within my lifetime, we do see the bears delisted. And that means that all that good work, the 40 years of IGBC, that we're entering the 40th year now, that we're entering into, that work pays off. And ideally it'll be in all those ecosystems. So keep it up, keep up the good work. Be kind to each other and always remember that everyone works for someone, but at the end of the day, you all want the same thing. And I have great faith. I'm excited to see what comes out of the next couple of years. Big stuff's happening from the Cascades down to Yellowstone and almost everywhere in between. So just, focus on that. Use David. He is a fantastic asset. And I'll still be around and hanging with the exec. I'll still be the Region 2 representative. So just wish you all well and wish you two well. Wish you two well. And it'll be fun to see what happens. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Just one song. Maybe.
I think we know.
So I just want to say, thank you, Jackie. So I did not have the benefit, obviously, of working with Jackie over the past couple of years, but I had the benefit of seeing her operate this week, and I've been taking lots of notes, and she's been whispering to me and giving me lots of good guidance, so I really appreciate that, and appreciate both David and Jackie kind of helping me get oriented. Yeah, again, I do recognize kind of the unusual nature in which I landed in this chair, but I will do my best to do the job's justice. I certainly recognize the importance of the group and what we're doing here. I take it very seriously. Jackie made the comments about restoring the trust in the room, and I hear that loud and clear. Because I don't have the long-term relationships that a lot of folks have in here. Some of you don't, some of you are in the same boat I am. We do need to work on building up our trust, and I'm committed to that. So I look forward to working with all of you. Thanks.
With that, I guess, is there a motion to adjourn?
We did have a public. piece.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jack. I'm sorry. No,
Sorry, we kind of jumped through that.
very important. So, I don't know if there's anybody on the list for today. Anyone in the room would like to make a public comment? Please don't be shy. If you like me, it's very important to get the input. Keep that offer open. If you would like to make a comment, please do come forward. We'll make the same request to folks online, and we have far fewer today than we've had the last few days. Anyone online would like to make a comment to the IGBC this morning? You can raise your hand or turn your camera on. Okay.
Well, it's your deal now. I'm sitting back.
Oh. Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
I second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Safe travels.
We'll see you next year.
Ed.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Yeah, but-
Okay. You're welcome. Yeah, that's great. Do you have on my phone? Oh my God.